perpetrated on purely innocent people.
A brutal mass killing shocking the Ottawa suburb of Barrhaven.
Oh my God, this is a big tragedy has happened in our street.
Police say shortly before 11 Wednesday night, officers were called here and found 6 people dead inside this home, including 4 children.
Officers entered the home to check on the safety of those inside, and that is where they began to discover the 6 victims, the youngest of which is less than 3 months old.
The family were newcomers to Canada, originally from Sri Lanka, a mother and her 4 children, aged 2 months, 2 years, 4 and 7. A 6th man was also found dead, an acquaintance who was living in the home.
Obviously, our first reactions are all ones of shock and horror at this terrible violence.
This news has shaken many residents throughout Ottawa. And of course, it's particularly troubling to neighbors and anyone living in Barrhaven.
The suspect, a 19-year-old man, was living in the home as well. Police say he killed the victims using an edged weapon, but wouldn't be more specific. Police have not provided any motive and say the focus of their investigation is to determine why this happened. The father and husband of the victims was seriously injured and remains in hospital. Neighbors describe what they saw and heard.
But I just saw after all the police cars came, then ambulance came, there's a lot of flashlights and all those things. And I came out, I said, okay, what's happening? Then I saw one guy was sitting on the left side of the driveway and he was yelling.
A huge police presence with, there must have been 10, 15 cop cars. And then a whole bunch of ambulances showed up, which is unusual. Usually there's 1 or 2 any kind of scene or whatnot, but there was like 7 or 8 here.
Now, this incident has really shaken people in this neighborhood who just aren't used to dealing with things like this. Jeremy Cheryl, CTV News, Ottawa.
That's exactly right, Michelle. This protest has been going on for hours now. Police have sealed off the road here behind me. This is Clark Avenue West. Let's give you a live look at the scene as we speak. Police have asked us to keep a distance and stay back. You can see the 2 sides of this protest have been physically separated by the street. There have been clashes when they have met in the middle. Police say that they have made some arrests. They have not updated the number of people in custody at this point, but this is an active protest that continues here in Thornhill at this hour. Tensions mounted as protesters clashed in the road. The 2 sides had been separated by the street in front of the synagogue. Officers quick to intervene and pull the pack apart.
Feel trapped here. Canada is no longer the country that I came to.
Palestine is not for sale!
The pro-Palestinian protesters on the north sidewalk enraged by a real estate seminar happening inside the synagogue.
It is unconscionable, first of all, to be selling stolen Palestinian land. There's a genocide happening. They're literally selling the land of the people that they're killing.
How is Canada allowing this illegal sales event to take place here, facilitating the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians?
On the other side of the street, some members of the Jewish community alleging it is simply a pretense to protest here at the synagogue.
We've been holding these kinds of seminars for years, where realtors from Israel come and they basically just have an informational evening to show people what's for sale.
Hurt and anger from some that the protest would unfold in front of their house of worship, alleging intimidation on their doorstep.
This is a no-go zone for protests. You can't come to a place of worship and harass prayers and harass people for being here.
This organization across the road is targeting the Bayit Synagogue. It's only a matter of time that there's going to be actual violence or acts of terrorism against, God forbid, the synagogue.
The other side saying they're simply protecting Palestine.
Palestinians have been forcefully displaced for over 75 years now. It's continuing every single day, and this is the reality of Palestinians who are living under military occupation.
We call for an end to this, and also an end to Canadian complicity, because Canada, by allowing this to happen, is also facilitating a war crime.
Bring them home!
Despair here at home as the conflict overseas rages on.
Everybody's losing sight of the hostages. It's time to bring the hostages home. There would be a ceasefire if they would tell us where the hostages are and release them.
A community divided in the shadow of the synagogue.
York Regional Police say they will be investigating any possible criminal incidents here. Again, they are not saying at this point how many people they have arrested, but they are urging protesters to keep the peace and act in a lawful manner. Protesters saying they do expect to stay here and continue to rally into the evening. Reporting live in Thornhill, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, over to you.
The description we have at this point put out for the shooter is the shooter was a male, dressed all in black clothing, wearing a face mask. The vehicle used is believed to be a newer model Honda Civic, either black or dark gray in color with a spoiler on the rear trunk.
Well, obviously it was pretty shocking, right? Like, you don't hear these type of things every day, but yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff to have to deal with, right? Especially the circumstances, I think.
We are a news family, so when the news came on, I called my daughter and I let her listen to the news, and then I explained it to her that this is what happened to Miss Wheeler, because she was very concerned as to why her teachers were crying yesterday.
Nathan, there is a growing memorial here at the Dotsenkos family home in Vaughan. This has been a very difficult week. People have been coming to lay flowers, have a moment of silence, and this is still very much a community in mourning. 3 teddy bears in a row, surrounded by bouquets of flowers on the doorstep of the Dotsenkos family home.
a tribute to the deep sense of loss being felt around King Township in Vaughan. The reality of the tragic plane crash in Nashville, turning from disbelief to devastation.
You realize that this has actually happened. She's really gone, and her kids, her husband.
The 5 victims on board have been identified as parents Victor and Rima and their 3 children, Emma, Adam, and David. Virginia knew Rima for 8 years and says she was a wonderful person.
Always had a positive spin on life. Loved her kids. Her kids were her world. Her and her husband had a tremendous relationship. Always working well together, always strive to do better. Her work ethic, so diligent, just over the top in every way.
All 3 children attended Umka Rich Tree Academy, about 15 minutes drive from home. Their school community left trying to understand.
It's a big tragedy, very, very sad news.
The Academy writing in a statement, Emma, Adam, and David Dotsenkos were a fantastic part of our school community. They were loved by all who knew them and will be sorely missed by our students and staff. In grief, they joined the flying community out of the Brampton-Caledon Airport, mourning a fellow pilot and his family. The plane was based here. The Dotsenkos took off from the Milton area Monday afternoon, making 2 stops before the catastrophic crash near a highway. The pilot alerting air traffic control his engine had failed.
Yes, I have the runway inside. I'm too far away. I won't make it.
The township's mayor, Steve Pellegrini, writing, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the loved ones of the victims during this incredibly difficult time. This is a heartbreaking and devastating loss for our tight-knit community."
I can't say enough good about her. I just want everybody to know what an amazing person she was. And I miss her terribly.
A family of 5 suddenly killed, the people in their lives trying to express the pain they feel. In the U.S., the National Transportation Safety Board says its final report with the probable cause for this crash may not be complete for more than a year. Right now, the focus remains on grieving and trying to say goodbye. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Nathan, back to you.
Well, the finance minister is talking about making investments in highways and healthcare and in transit, but he says that rebuild of the economy won't come with higher taxes and fees. Last year's spending plan put a focus on building. When Peter Bethlen-Falvey introduces Ontario's 2024 budget on March 26th,
we're going to continue to focus on making life a little bit more affordable for people and for businesses.
The finance minister says there are lingering pressures from higher interest rates and inflation, but the government wants to rebuild the economy without hiking fees and taxes.
We continue to find ways to reduce fees, for example, on the car, license fees, the stickers, and of course the gas tax cut.
But will there be more breaks?
I'm ruling out telling you what's going to be in the budget.
Targeted tax support.
Last month, Bethlen-Falvey predicted Ontario would end this fiscal year with a deficit of $4.5 billion, much higher than was set out in last year's budget. The government has had to dig deeper to pay for the undoing of Bill 124, struck down as unconstitutional.
The arbitration settlements that come out of that, of course, I've set aside money to make sure that we can fairly remunerate our great teachers and workers in this province.
The Financial Accountability Office estimates the tally could be north of $13 billion. Opposition parties agree the government needs to make moves to bring down the cost of living.
A big one, I think, would be bringing in rent control. I think that would have a massive impact on so many people's lives. A lot of people right now are living in fear of not being able to make their rent or their mortgage.
And pump money into primary care.
Too many people are having to choose their credit card instead of their OHIP card. I think that's a burden on families. So how do you relieve that burden? Make sure that their healthcare system works for them.
While a new housing bill is coming this spring,
we need funding to build homes that people can afford to live in. We need funding to address the mental health crisis people are facing.
Well, the housing minister announced today that new housing bill won't come until after the budget and suggested there will be some elements of the housing strategy in the spending plan. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Michelle, back to you.
Fast cars and expensive tastes. Ayasa Aboud's social media presence tells the story of a journey from a broke 16-year-old riding the bus to a high-powered businessman in a $1.4 million Lamborghini. But Aboud is accused in court documents of being a directing mind of a strategy to take advantage of a financial tool called a Notice of Security Interest, or NOSI for short. It's a claim on a property based on equipment that's been installed there. In one alleged scheme, 11 NOSIs worth $150,000 were secured on Carl Hoffman's Bowmanville property for multiple products his family says he didn't need. He was 81 and had short-term memory loss from a brain aneurysm. Then Hoffman claims people approached him saying he should get a mortgage to pay these off, even providing lawyers to help. But he alleges they appeared as saviors but were in fact conspirators.
When people came to the door, knocking at the door with these, great plans and ideas to help him, he thought that was real.
The Ontario government said this week it found $1 billion worth of NOSIs on the books in Ontario. It can't tell the difference between what is legitimate and what is fraudulent, so they all have to go.
That total is quite a large number, and that means that criminal activity is being perpetuated, shall I say. So we need to address that with a retrospective or retroactive effect to the legislation.
2 lawyers named in the Hoffman case have been suspended after multiple complaints, though one is considering an appeal. Ontario's Law Society warned lawyers last year about being part of exploitative loan agreements, saying lawyers must ensure that they inform themselves of the client's circumstances and are in a position to act in the best interests of their clients. The Hoffman family's lawyer, Greg Whedon, says he's concerned that while the NOSIs are to be wiped, they haven't been wiped out yet, and there could be a gold rush to profit off them in the coming months.
They're going to try to extract as much money as they can up until the time that this legislation is passed. And, that's going to be on the backs of the consumers.
The allegations haven't been proven in court. As for Aboud, his lawyer simply said no comment. The Hoffmans believe he's left the country. John Woodward, CTV News.
Well, and that vigil is taking place just really a block away from the house where these 6 people were found murdered. It is a growing vigil. People have dropped off flowers. They've dropped off stuffed animals like unicorns and rabbits. There's even a rattle and a note that says, "Our hearts are shattered." And that really is the sense that you get from the community today. The youngest victim in all of this, just 2.5 months old. A mother killed along with her 4 children and another man, an acquaintance, who was living in the home. Just a devastating scene that played out late last night and then into the day today as residents woke up to all the police activity outside this home in Barrhaven, a quiet suburb of Ottawa. People never expecting anything like this to happen, let alone have so many children be taken so horrifically. That's right. We know that he's a Sri Lankan national, believed to be in this country as a student. He was living in the home, an acquaintance of the family, 19 years old, facing 6 charges of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. And we don't know too much else about him. We don't know when it comes to a motive. Police have not really said anything about that. Of course, that is one of the many questions that people have, is how and why did this happen? And, you know, trying to make sense of something that you really can't. The police chief calling this just senseless, and the community feeling that tonight. There's a lot of people who have started to gather here now to mourn and remember these lives lost. Well, there were still police inside the house before we moved to this location, not too far away. Homicide detectives arriving pretty much throughout the day, canvassing the neighborhood, talking to people, perhaps collecting some surveillance footage from the area. And as you mentioned, we believe the sole survivor in this, the husband and the father of the victims, he's in hospital in serious but stable condition. And so you can bet that police are going to be speaking with him and hoping to shed some light on what happened to his family.
First of all, a patient has to confirm that their dentist, their provider, is actually participating in the plan and confirm what the services that they need will be covered under CDCP. They have to be aware that it may not cover the full cost of the visit and that the patients will have to directly pay the provider after the appointment anything that isn't covered.
So moving forward on Pharmacare, contraceptives and diabetes medications just makes sense in terms of not just being there for Canadians and making sure they have all the opportunities to succeed and have great fulfilled lives, but also countering the affordability challenges that we know Canadians are facing right across the country.
Going forward, I'm just left with a dead van in my driveway.
Tanya Calvo of the Brighton area has a 2018 Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid Limited. It's a vehicle with 230,000 kilometers, and recently it stopped working.
We were driving down the road, the vehicle went into limp mode, and we lost complete motor mobility of the vehicle.
The family had the van towed to a Chrysler dealership and were told the hybrid battery needed to be replaced.
They stated that we needed a new lithium battery, which was going to cost just over $26,000.
Concerned about spending that much money, they decided to go to a different Chrysler dealership, and there they got a completely different diagnosis.
They actually quoted that it was not the lithium battery that was the issue, that it was the transmission or the motor, which would also cost just over $28,000 to repair.
Calvo says now it's not clear if both repairs need to be done.
If we were to go forth with both of the diagnostics on each side, it would have costed us over $55,000.
CTV News reached out to Stellantis, the parent company of Chrysler, to ask if there was anyone there who could diagnose exactly what's wrong with Calvo's van. Stellantis did a final diagnosis procedure and said, "We have determined the vehicle's high-voltage battery is functioning as intended. The limp mode in this case is related to transmission function, for which warranty coverage does not apply." So Calvo was told she will have to pay for a new transmission at a cost of more than $11,000, but she says she has lost faith in the vehicle and won't go ahead with repairs.
They would like it removed off their lot, and I am now left with what they call a brick of a vehicle to dispose of myself.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
63-year-old Shane McPhee began researching Vyalev after it was recently approved in Canada. For years, levodopa, which Shane takes in gel form using a pump, has been the main treatment for Parkinson's disease. But Shane, like many other patients, has what are called off times.
The off time is when the meds didn't seem to be working for whatever reason. Maybe I didn't sleep well. Maybe I ate food and I took my meds too close.
Vyalev is specially designed for patients who suffer from off times. A pump is used to administer a medication which becomes levodopa in the body.
First of all, it's continuous delivery. Second, it's delivered under the skin in the subcutaneous tissue, so it doesn't require a G-tube.
Dr. Alfonso Fasano says it's an important step forward.
The prediction is that in 20 years from now, the number of patients will be twice as much than we have right now. So they call it the pandemic of Parkinson's disease.
Dr. Fasano says the main potential adverse effect from the new drug might be skin irritation or infections. Shane is thinking about whether he might benefit from Vyalev.
I said, I'm not going to jump into something that's brand new. I said, I'd like to, but I don't know what the repercussions are going to be or the adverse effects are going to be. And I'm sort of selfishly looking at one window of time, which is that off time between when I go to bed, when I get up in the morning.
Wife Sandra says the muscle rigidity and pain from Parkinson's often disrupts his sleep and hers. It becomes an endless spiral because being tired aggravates his Parkinson's more.
And I think that would help both of our sleeps, because that's one thing we're both lacking is sleep.
The new drug has not yet been approved in the U.S., and coverage here is still being worked out, so for the coming months it will probably only be available to those with private coverage. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
I should have just asked you, but I never asked you. So now, 4 years later, I don't even know you. But I admire you. Was dread. I was just wondering if you would mind signing my yearbook.
I don't have mine with me.
Oh, God, that's okay. Here's a pen for you.
The investigation has found that an edged weapon was used to cause the deaths and injuries.
lose anybody, especially for him to go down with his family.
Pacific, Kansas City traded at record highs today, above $120 in Toronto. Investors have high hopes for growth of the rail carrier, which took over Kansas City Southern last year in a deal that gave it a network running from Canada to Mexico. Raymond James analyst Steve Hansen says opportunities include refrigerated cars for bringing meat to Mexico. Shares in rival CN Rail have also been rising, but they're still down 2% from a record high in late February. On the markets, the Canadian dollar changed hands at 74.3 US cents, up about 1/3 of a cent. WTI oil was at $78.93, down 20 cents. Western Canadian Select oil changed hands at $62.39, up 89 cents. And the TSX Composite Index settled at 21,794.56, up just over 200 points. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Edmondson scores! Joel Edmondson's first of the year from out near the blue line.
Great one-timer. Edmondson's made a number of really good, solid defensive plays in this game. Some good reads in the neutral zone. Stepping up and picking off some...
Matthews scores! Game winner! Number 54!
Quickly with it, pushing it, finds RJ, gathering, he's got 11 and a timeout. Willie Green and the Raptors have responded.